is David FitzGerald, and I am the co-director of the Center for Comparative Immigration Studies, along with Claire Adida. Today, we are delighted to have Rufat Efendiyev, who will be speaking with us about issues of migration and integration of Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States. Before we get going, though, I just want to make a couple of announcements. The first is that our final seminar in this series will be June 8th. We'll be hearing from Dr. Tala Arrusan. She is a professor in the School of Medicine here at UC San Diego, and she will be speaking with us about a global response to the COVID epidemic and how refugees fit into those issues. We will hear in just a moment from Rufat, and after his presentation, he'll present for about 30 or 35 minutes. We'll have a Q&A session. If you have any questions during his presentation, simply use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And during the Q&A section, I will collate those responses and read them to Rufat, and then we'll have an answer from him. Again, Rufat Efendiyev is a visiting scholar here at CCIS. He is also a Fulbright visiting scholar. When he is not in the US, he is based in Azerbaijan, where he is associate professor and chief researcher at the Institute of Economics of the Azerbaijan National Academy of Sciences. He has written and researched very extensively on migration patterns in the Caucasus, as well as many parts of Europe. And it's a real delight to welcome him today to speak with us about the research that he's been conducting over the last few months on Azerbaijanis in the United States. Welcome, Rufat, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear David. I have people from Azerbaijan, and I expect there are people from Europe as well. So I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And thank you very much for joining this webinar today. So first of all, I'm very grateful to Fulbright Mission for supporting this research that is being conducted in the United States. A special thank I have for the Center for Comparative Immigration Studies at this University of California, San Diego, being a host for during all this research process. And of course, my deepest gratitude for you, supervisor of this study, co-director of CCIS, Professor David Scott FitzGerald, for your support and scholarly advices. So I'm sorry, due to some technical problems, my presentation will be demonstrated by Megan. Thank you very much, Megan, for helping me in doing this. So I think we can start. So today you see here the table of contents. After introduction, we will be talking about the history of migration of Azeris to the United States. Then we will have some socio-demographic profile of Azerbaijani-born population in the United States. Then I will provide you with some literature review and theoretical framework, and after that about methodology of this research. At the end, I will, it will not be the end, but it will be like in the middle, I will present you the research findings of this study. So I have divided it into 10 sections, as you see. So first is the social demographic indicators, then we will talk about the standard of living at homeland, it means in Azerbaijan. Then we will talk about pull factors. After that, we will talk about standard of living in the United States, employment aspects. One of the questions was very interesting, what Azerbaijani immigrants dislike more about the United States. Then we will talk about the integration and adaptation to mainstream culture. And at the end, we will talk about the visits to Azerbaijan and attitudes to repatriation. Next slide, please. Next, please. So as you see, the United States is one of the destination countries for Azerbaijani immigrants among the Russia, Turkey, Germany, and other European countries. Most Azerbaijani Americans have immigrated to the United States from Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkey, and Russia. And comparing to largest ethnic communities in the United States, the Azerbaijani community is both much smaller and younger. However, the Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States are poorly studied. There are almost no published academic studies devoted to research Azerbaijani immigrants in the USA. Such facts prove fragmentation and incompleteness of demographic knowledge about the US-based Azerbaijanis. So the overall two tasks of the present study were to systematize available demographic information on Azerbaijanis residing in the United States. And the second one was to explore migration behavior as a part of demographic behavior of Azerbaijani immigrants living in the US, addressing the question how the experience of residing in the US as an ethnic minority influenced their consciousness, language, ethnic identities, socio-economic situation, and civil position. So next, please. So as mentioned, the subject of Azerbaijani immigration and integration in the US have not received due attention in academic paper. However, there were several attempts to explore this issue by various researchers. For example, Ramazan Uslu and Sinan Kocaman in their paper studied the activities of the Azerbaijani diaspora in the United States. According to their findings, immigration of Azerbaijanis to the United States occurred in 4 phases. So the first one took place in 1920 after disintegration of People's Republic of Azerbaijan through the immigration of wealthy segment, dissident politicians and scientists. The second phase dates back to years of 1940-1950, and it's associated with the Azerbaijani soldiers who were taken captured after the World War II, choosing the USA as a permanent place of settlement. And the first phase consists of immigration of Azerbaijanis from Iran to the United States in years of 1950-1960. And the last phase has arisen from Azerbaijanis who were opposed to the regime in Iran and population from the Azerbaijan Republic to the US in the period of conflict starting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And this period covers 1970-1990s. Next, please. So after the collapse of the USSR, the immigration in post-Soviet Azerbaijan also went through several phases, each having its own set of characteristics and threats that had different impacts on socio-economic and political life. So in general, mass labor immigration started in 1995 when the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict ceased. These flows mainly headed for the Russian Federation until a major financial crisis that hit the country in 1998. Resulting in decreasing job opportunities for labor migrants there. Since then, Azerbaijan immigration has been redirected towards other countries, including the USA, Germany, and Turkey. And according to World Bank figures, there were 1,032,160 Azerbaijani citizens who lived outside of Azerbaijan in 2010. It was an equivalent to 60% of entire country's population. And the main destination country was Russia, with about 60% of Azerbaijani immigrants, followed by Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Israel, Germany, and Turkey. Next, please. So as we see in studying Muslims in the United States, settlers and visitors, Arif Gayur showed that there were around 3,000 Azerbaijanis living in New York, Patterson, New Jersey, Brooklyn, and Chicago in 1980. Recent studies show that Azerbaijani community has been living in the states of California, New Jersey, New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and District of Columbia. Most of Azerbaijanis reside in South California, especially in Los Angeles. In addition to this, it's possible to encounter Azerbaijanis in New York, Washington, Chicago, dispersedly. Next, please. There are also several studies on Iranian Americans, where Azerbaijan is sometimes mentioned as a part of Iranian immigrants. For example, Chiba Naoki, a Japanese, in his PhD thesis on anthropology on Iranians in the United States and Japan, self-imagery and individual collective dynamics, indicates that Iranians in the United States are ethnically and religiously divergent, and each subgroup has different culture repertoire and social orientation. So the author assumes that the South California, especially Los Angeles and its vicinity, have the largest Iranian population in the world outside the Middle East. In support of the above mentioned, let's cite the research of Shirin Hakimzadeh, which shows a full mosaic of visibly diverse ethnic groups in Iran today, where Persians compose only 51% of the population, while other groups include the Azeris 24%, Gilaki and Mazandaranis 8%, Kurds 7%, Arabs 3%, Lurs 2%, Baluks 2%, and Turkmens 2%. Next one, please. So according to 2000 US Census, there were an estimated 14,205 people residing in the US born in Azerbaijan, out of which 5,530 were naturalized US citizens and 8,675 not US citizens, from which 47.9% were males and 52.1% were females in total. So far, US Census 2000 did not count Azerbaijani American born in countries other than Azerbaijan. It's undoubted that the real number of Azerbaijani American community is much higher, For instance, Iranian American Community Survey 2005 result tell us that 11% of respondents has Azeri or Azeri in Persian pronunciation, the second largest group after Persian ethnic background. Thus, according to different estimates, an approximate number of Azerbaijanis living in the United States nowadays ranges from 400,000 up to 700,000 and more. So this year, United States also conducting the US census. I was participating in it, and I've been asked the place of my residence and the place of my birth. So I hope this time it will be calculated and we will see the results. So please, next slide. So let's analyze the most recent available data on Azerbaijani population in the US based on yearbooks of immigration statistics of the Department of Homeland Security. According to DHA's data, as it can be seen from figure 1 below, that for period 2000-2017, the number of Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States was decreasing in 5 main categories, besides non-immigrant admissions of Azerbaijanis based both on the country of residence and the country of citizenship. In both categories, we can observe a sharp 2.4 3.4 times increase in migration flow. Please, next slide. So as we see, and this figure shows that in the mid-2000s, the level of immigration from Azerbaijan to the United States slowed down and began to demonstrate new trend. And according to recent international migration studies, particularly after 2006, 2007, Azerbaijan became an immigrant receiving country. Thus, according to DHA study, a total of 15,813 people from Azerbaijan were naturalized as US citizens in 2000-2017. There were 2,289 refugees arrival from Azerbaijan. 1,316 persons were granted asylum based on affirmative asylum application, and 363 persons based on defensive asylum application. 17,854 Azerbaijanis obtained legal permanent residence status in the US in 2017. So the number of non-immigrant admissions of Azerbaijan by country of citizens to the United States made up 89,970 persons, and there were 83,110 non-immigrant admissions from Azerbaijan by country of residence in 2017. Next slide, please. So the first comprehensive article regarding namely the Azerbaijani immigrants to the United States appeared in Hazard Journal of Humanities and Social Science in 2015. In this article, Ahmed Kuliyev, based on also sociological survey among 103 respondents, studied social cultural characteristics and identity issues of first generation Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States. Before this study, there was not any reliable academic population survey that provided information on any kind on attitudes or the opinions of Azerbaijani Americans. Based on the conducted survey between Azerbaijani immigrants, the paper provides us with the profile of Azerbaijani community in the United States, assess the immigrants' identification with their native culture, ethnic attachment, as well as emotional ties to the homeland and level of integration in the United States. Next, please. It should be noted that migration and mobility research for the last decade already focused upon mental maps of movement behavior, the role of search, place preference, and the motives of stayers as well as movers. The main stress in recent migration and mobility research has been upon concept development and model formulation. For example, Ineta Zichkute and Vilmante Kumpikaite in their study proposed a theoretical model of economic behavior insights based on decision to migrate. The proposed model extends analysis based on standard economic approach to aspects of behavioral economics, composing framing effects, gains, losses, reference point, loss aversion, risk seeking, endowment effect, and comparison the situation between source and destination countries. So our study aims to deepen the knowledge about Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States through in-depth interviews revealing underlying motivation and migratory behavior of Azerbaijani immigrant respondents. Please, next. So a Center for Comparative Immigration Studies at the University of California, San Diego became a primary place for this study. So according to World Population Review, California is a big state on the west coast of the United States that is being home to one of the world's most diverse populations. Ranking first in population among the US states, current estimate for California population in 2020 is around, let's say, 40 million people. From the other hand, California's total area of about 163,000 square meters is the third largest by area among the US states. Actually, Azerbaijan with a total square of 33 and 400 square meters is almost 4.9 times smaller than California. And with estimated population of 10.2 million is 3.9 times less than California one. So California state should be an ideal place in the United States for migration status. Next, please. So we see the map here from an economic perspective, and according to the special report published in 2019 by The Economist, if the state of California was an independent country, it would have the 5th largest economy in the world. In this report, The Economist looks at California and Texas states as a harbingers of two alternative futures of the United States. Later, Xero Media, a subsidiary of Eurasia Group, the world's leading political risk analysis firm, being inspired by this report, produced a visualization on how do the economies of the individual US states stack up against other countries. And as we see from the figure 2, California economy is about the size of the United Kingdom's, while Utah's matches up with Azerbaijanis. Next slide, please. So let's talk about methodology. Based on these premises, we developed and conducted 10 random anonymous in-depth interviews with Azerbaijanis born in the Republic of Azerbaijan and residing in the USA. Some interviews took place face-to-face, in other cases over the phone when the respondent participant was outside the California state. Announcements regarding anonymous interviews were posted on social networks in several thematic groups in 3 languages, Azerbaijani, English, and Russian. Thus, among 10 respondents, 3 persons were from California, 2 persons from Illinois, 1 person from Michigan, 1 from Ohio, 1 from Maine, 1 from New York, and 1 person from Massachusetts. There were 4 females and 6 males in total, with a range of ages from 24 years old up to 71 years old. So the median age of respondent participant was 43. Approaches have been made to other Azerbaijanis living in San Diego, California and beyond the state, but unfortunately no consent was obtained from there to be interviewed. Next, please. So you see here the screenshot of the face group and my announcement there in Russian language. And I was asking people to participate in my interviews. So in-depth interviews in general technique allowed us to establish rapport with participants to make them feel more comfortable, which helped generate more insightful responses, especially regarding sensitive topics. We had a great opportunity to ask follow-up questions, probe for additional information, cycle back to the question later in the interview to generate a rich understanding of attitudes, perceptions, and motivations. When interviews took place face-to-face, we were able to monitor changes in tone and word choice to gain a deeper understanding. Focuses on body language as well. In general, in-depth interview technique allow us to have fewer participants to glean useful and relevant insight. At last, since in-depth interviews can potentially be so insightful, it's possible to identify highly valuable findings quickly. So next, please. So I would like to share the research findings. So first of all, is socio-demographic indicators. So due to the sudden coronavirus disease outbreak all over the world in early 2020, and due to the fact that social contacts between people decreased drastically, these research methods allow us to focus not on large sample as in standard social surveys, but on the small segment of total random of 10 persons, Azerbaijani immigrants. So all 10 respondents were representative of Azerbaijani nationality. 6 out of 10 persons were married, 2 single, 1 divorced, and 1 widowed. 7 out of 10 Azerbaijani immigrants have children, and according to our study, the average number of children in an Azerbaijani immigrants families 2.15. So 6 families of immigrants with children live all together. 1 family, which is divorced immigrant, stayed in Azerbaijan. The study has revealed that length of residency in the United States at 10 immigrants varies from 3 up to 30 years, while an average make up 13.6 years. Next slide, please. So the study also shows a very high percentage of people with high educational background. 9% out of 10, while 1 respondent reported a secondary technical educational background, currently undergoing further training in the United States. This phenomenon can also be proved by earlier studies that reveal an epidemiologic paradox in the former Soviet Union. Immigrants possess higher levels of education compared with the US-born born whites. In fact, this can be explained by still wide availability of free higher education in post-Soviet Azerbaijan. One of the most important components of successful adaptation into American society is the degree of English language proficiency. And our study revealed the unique aspect. Each Azerbaijani immigrant freely, from 10 that we have interviewed, freely speaks at least 3 languages, Azerbaijani, English, and Russian. All 10 respondents reported this, of which 4% also speak Turkish, 2% French, and 2% German languages. This, in fact, is a clear indication of very high level of both intellectual development and educational level of Azerbaijani immigrants. Next, please. So, standard of living at homeland in Azerbaijan. The narratives allowed us to draw several conclusions. So as in any other society, there is no consensus about all the people on some phenomenon. We distinguish 3 categories in responses of immigrants: favorable, neutral, and negative reviews, as their answers indicate. So favorable condition of standard of living at home or at homeland in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States associate with an average income, availability of own property, home or apartment, and work. In essence, this all forms a certain basis for human lives, a different new culture indicated as a pull factor to move to the United States. So neutral conditions in several responses are characterized as normal, average, or middle. Indeed, these characteristics are found in the narratives of different people while remembering an average income, middle link, average lifestyle, an ordinary Soviet family, etc. So despite almost 30 years old collapse of the Soviet Union, the phenomenon of averaging is still rooted in minds of people as a kind of standard. It's noteworthy that this vocabulary is peculiar not only to immigrants of the older generation, but also to the younger generation. The pull-push factors influencing the decision to migrate are again cultural and also economic and political. So negative living conditions in Azerbaijan before departure to the US, some immigrants associate with low wages, the cost of living, and various social values. Summarizing this principle of repeatability, various economic, social, cultural, and political factors are indicated in the narratives of Azerbaijani immigrants while describing a standard of living in Azerbaijan at time of their moving to the United States. Next, please. So let's talk about push factors. The study revealed the difficulty and inconvenience of the question on the main reasons for immigration to the United States. Most of replies were given without any enthusiasm. Immigrants briefly motivated the main reason of their decision to leave Azerbaijan. Some were trying to skip this direct question. In general, there will always be push factors that encourage and motivate people to leave the place they live, while at the same time, pull factors will draw people to leave everything they have ever known in search of something better. So based on narratives, we can identify the following main reasons for immigration from Azerbaijan among the respondents. So first is, we know, the US green card lottery. Second is the family reunification. Third one is the new educational opportunities or purposes. Fourth one is a better occupational opportunities. And the fifth is the relocation to a country with a higher standard of living, including expanded social, economic, and political freedoms and opportunities. So let's talk next, please. So next, talk about the push factors. Our study revealed some gender, we're talking about the push factors. Our study also revealed the gender aspects of the phenomenon. Thus, women are mainly to immigrate for family reasons, while men are more likely to demonstrate economic motivation and interest in education opportunity and extended freedoms. So in logical to argue that the last fifth motivation, relocation to a country with a higher standard of living, was the principal one for all the main immigrants regarding their gender or age. So one of the skipped reasons for immigration not fully covered by the replies of the immigrants on our study was an international marriage. Even if there is no reliable statistics on international marriages in Azerbaijan, the US Census Bureau shows that percentage of married couple households that are interracial or interethnic grew across the United States from 7.4 to 10.2% from 2000 to 2012, 2016. This change varied across the states and countries for the specific interracial, interethnic combinations. Beyond all doubt, an international marriage can also be pull factor for potential immigrant to the United States. Besides that, I have had a talk with one immigrant that was asylum seeker, but unfortunately, I couldn't have an interview from him because he rejected that. So next slide, please. So pull factors. What drives Azerbaijani immigrants to the United States? So returning to the theory of the phenomenon, let's note that the push-pull factors were first proposed by Everett Lee. Aside from characteristics unique to the specific ethnic minority areas, the push-pull factors actually are the main determinants for migration. Lee's theory views population migration as a physical change of residence in specific contexts and points out that migration is a result of interplay between pull and push factors associated with the area of origin, area of destination, intervening obstacles, and personal factors. It's a process affected by the pull factors of destination and the push factors of the place of origin. In our study, we focused more on personal factors, studying the real practices of immigrants and identifying the pull factors through the eyes of those who have already moved to the United States. So the study itself also contributes to all of above four categories. So next slide, please. So based on narratives, we can identify the main pull factors that attract people to move to the United States. So we see the first one is a country of freedom and lots of opportunities for implementation. The second one is the rule of law. The third one is a no corruption. The fourth one is ease of integration into American society. Fifth is a wide opportunities for economic activity, lack of barriers in doing business, ease of finding a new job, high mobility of the workforce, no need to be tied to one place. Sixth one is the attractive cultural environment, supports the diversity of ethnic groups, the ability to communicate with former compatriots in their native language. 7 is a high quality of food and clothing, and 8 is a clean ecology. As we see, the factors above is in-depth modification of the list of strengths of living in the US through the eyes of immigrants we systematized earlier. So altogether, they form a kind of sustainable structure of viable factors working to effectively attract new immigrants to the United States. So next one, please. So let's talk about standard of living in the US, as I said, by the immigrants. So as a part of the study, Azerbaijani immigrants were asked to characterize their standard of living in the US after the move. So the narrative for Azerbaijani immigrants give us opportunity to draw a list of characteristics which we systematize below. So the strengths of living in the United States were a democratic society, tremendous development opportunities, lack of corruption, high salaries, the existence of various ethnic enclaves in the biggest cities of the US, ease of integration into American society for the younger or second generation of immigrant families, low interest on home loans, mortgages, and as a consequences of all above is a high quality of life. Next one, please. So while the weaknesses of living in the United States, so through the eyes of immigrants, were the difficulties associated with the lack of knowledge of the English language, difficulties associated with the primary adaptation, nostalgia for the homeland, difficulties associated with the job search, especially by specialty, high cost of living, high cost of rental housing, and quality of housing. Next one, please. So employment aspects and spheres of activity of Azerbaijani immigrants, both in Azerbaijan and the US, were of high interest in our study. And the results of conducted in-depth interviews suggest that Azerbaijani immigrants in the US are mostly engaged with the professional translation services. Also, they are represented in the social, technical, and financial spheres. Some take managerial positions, some are pensioners, while the one was still a student. So 9 out of 10 respondents were engaged with professional activity and had a job in Azerbaijan. 1 white female did not work due to young age. Next one, please. So maybe interesting question, maybe not. The next question, what Azerbaijani immigrants dislike most about the USA? So life in the United States, as in any other country in the world, has its pros and cons, which you should definitely know when making the decision to immigrate or stay. And the difficulty of immigration to the United States for a particular person is determined by the objective parameters, like knowledge of English language, educational background, a demanded specialty, financial capabilities, or affordable legalization options. So the narratives allow us to make a general conclusion that the United States is a country with many peculiarities that an immigrant will have to face after moving. Our findings are based on subjective assessment of immigrants, their personal experience, and may not coincide or may partially coincide with the reality that immigrant, even Azerbaijani one, will encounter after moving to the United States. Next one, please. So we can summarize and highlight the main difficulties mentioned by the Azerbaijani immigrants. So the first one is the nostalgia, homesickness, and remoteness from family and friends. The second one is a language barrier. Third one is a personal and cultural differences like a culture shock. Fourth one is a social integration issues and interpersonal relations. Then it's come gastronomic differences, high cost of living, difficulties associated with the job search, like it was mentioned, protectionism, work by speciality was a problem. Then it comes the quality of pricing of medical care. And the last one, like an immigrant complex with a psychological pain or feeling of being second rate in relation to the local population, which can affect self-esteem, etc. Not every immigrant is confronted with this complex, but whoever encounters it's having a hard time. That's the question on what Azerbaijani immigrants dislike most about the US, with using in-depth interviews technique revealed both general and, let's say, more systemic problems that immigrants encounter after the moving to the United States. Next one, please. So integration and adaptation to mainstream culture. Throughout the study, immigrants who participated in in-depth interviews repeatedly mentioned terms such as cultural difference and culture shock. So what is a culture shock? In 1954, Canadian anthropologist Oberg coined the term of culture shock and identified 4 stages that individuals experience when interacting with a new culture. The process could last months, years, or much longer. So according to Oberg's theory, the culture shock can be described as consisting of at least 1 of 4 distinct phases. Next one, please. So it's a honeymoon stage, it's a crisis stage like frustration stage, it's a recovery stage like adjustment stage, and then it's an adaptation stage. So even if this theory has been repeatedly criticized for being too universal in nature, indicating that it cannot correspond to the whole diversity of immigrant experience, despite all these shortcomings and quite conditional nature, it was conferred partially on completely by numerous studies and various researchers. Next one, please. So according to the narratives, almost all immigrants psychologically went through 4 stages of culture shock described above after moving to the United States, yet it's difficult to establish that specific time frame of each stage. Immigrants' experience during each stage is individual. Ipso facto, the question on duration could be very conditional. In this situation, we are more likely to identify and group the main problems associated with the integration of Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States. Next one, please. So summarizing the above mentioned, we find 4 major groups among the main identified issues related to the integration and adaptation of Azerbaijani immigrants in the United States. The first group is the linguistic and cultural difficulties, as a language barrier, a different mentality, other values, and other cuisine, etc. Group 2, it's the legal difficulties as an immigration status, legalization options, obtaining an extension of visas, driver's license, opening a bank account, obtaining a loan, etc. Group 3 is the psychological differences as a nostalgia for homeland, longing for friends, relatives, and close people, lost opportunities for socialization, and a sense of isolation. And the last group 4 is domestic difficulties like public transport problem, like different measures of weight, temperature, distance, etc. So we can also highlight that the first 3 groups of difficulties were most often mentioned by all immigrants who took part in this study. So next one, please. So I'm almost finished, but there are just 2 findings. So visits to Azerbaijan. According to the narratives, 3 out of 10 Azerbaijani immigrants did not visit homeland after the move to the United States. Also, 3 out of 10 persons visited Azerbaijan once per year. 2 out of 10 persons visited homeland once per 3 years. And also 2 last persons visited Azerbaijan once per 10 years period. So next one, please. As can be seen from the graph above, so 70% from our sample of Azerbaijani immigrants living in the United States visited homeland at least once after the move. There is also an obvious interrelation between immigrants' length of residence in the United States and the frequency of visits to homeland. So the study revealed that among 10 persons of the share of people with a longer period of time of residence in the United States tended to visit Azerbaijan less frequently and even made no visits ever after they moved to the States. This logical conclusion is also consistent with the conclusions made earlier by Kuliev in his study. So to determine a more accurate correlation between these parameters, more significant amounts of data are needed. So in the framework of our study, this was not possible to fulfill, especially during this COVID time. So next and the last one, please. So the final question that we asked the immigrants was about repatriation issues and sounded as, do you intend to go back to Azerbaijan? The purpose of this question was to determine the degree of connection of Azerbaijani immigrants with the homeland. we intended to clarify whether the use of residence in the United States affected their self-identity. By identity in this context, we understand a certain self-awareness based on self-determination of individuals, which forms a sense of belonging to one's community and an option about differences from others. Identity in turn manifests itself in the aggregate or relatively stable and interconnected images of one's and others' communities. And the markers of national identity in our context were commitment to the Azerbaijani state, ethnicity, the Azerbaijani language, religion, and territoriality. So our study revealed, as exactly with the question about the frequency of visit to homeland, which were examined in detail earlier, 7 out of 10 respondents expressed their willingness to return back to Azerbaijan, indicating the presence of one or another of the above aforementioned markers and periodic visits back to homeland. 3 immigrants indicated a complete lack of desire to return to Azerbaijan. Thus, due to in-depth interviews technique, we were able to understand some aspects of Azerbaijani community in the United States, various socio-economic and social-cultural characteristics, assess the Azerbaijani immigrants' identification with Azerbaijani culture, ethnic attachment as well, emotional and economic ties to the homeland, and the level of immigrants' integration in the United States. Altogether, all these together assisted us in exploring migration behavior of Azerbaijani immigrants living in the United States. So, next slide, please, and it's the last one. So thank you very much for joining me in this seminar.
Thank you very much, Rufat. And we already have a couple of questions here. The first comes from Leila Aslanova, who herself is an Azerbaijani immigrant to the US and works for the Fulbright Commission. And she wants to know more about your sample size. You mentioned the difficulty during the COVID pandemic of reaching respondents, but it would be great to know what is the age group of your respondents and whether difficulty with language and nostalgia might be different for a younger group of respondents. And in general, perhaps you could reflect on how your findings might be different if you had had a larger sample of Azerbaijanis in the States.
Yeah, for sure. It could be larger, but this time it was posted on Facebook. So I was the grant for this.
This is Warren. You're breaking up.
Sorry?
You're breaking up on the audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, maybe just with the audio and you'll have a clearer signals.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little distorted, but go ahead and try.
Okay. So the sample was like I was posting my posting the ads in the internet, and they were responses from the audience that were able to answer to participate in my in-depth interviews. So in this, I was not going to conduct a survey, like I said in previous studies that were conducted survey, but this time I was going to have interviews with a low amount of people, with less people, but to have these insights from their side. So sample was coming from the audience. I didn't put any frameworks for that, like it should be 10 or 12 or 20. I had responses from 10 persons. That it was, you know, this COVID situation. So I was doing it only with these 10 persons. And as I said in my presentation, and right now, the age was coming from 21, if I'm not wrong, to 71 years old. So it was like they were representatives of different age groups.
Okay, I have a question about, I was very interested to learn about the large numbers of Iranian immigrants in the US who are ethnically Azeri, and I'm wondering if you can say anything about the extent to which they self-identify as such in ways in the United States. Does this form a salient axis for community organization or marriage or other relationships? Are there relationships between the Iranian Azeris and those who were born in Azerbaijan? Can you say anything more about that population?
Well, unfortunately, you know, in my study, I was only focused on Azerbaijanis that were being born in Azerbaijan. But I have met with several people here, and they said that there are Iranian Azerbaijans here as well. But I was myself twice in Iran, and they identify themselves like Turkish, not like Azeri people, but like as a Turkish people. So in my study, I was trying to identify problems of Azeris being born in Azerbaijan and that right now here in America. I'm sure they should be studied in Persian language or maybe in English as well about Iranian Azerbaijanis. And as you see, as you really conducted by the Iranian diaspora, and they shown the number of the Iranians that are here in the United States and especially here in California. So unfortunately, my focus was not on Iranian Azerbaijanis, but it was only on Azerbaijanis that are here right now. And as you know, Azerbaijan was divided before to two parts. So it was like northern part of Azerbaijan and south part of Azerbaijan, which right now belongs to Iran. But again, unfortunately, I was focused only on Azerbaijans that were born in Azerbaijan. So maybe there is a good, there is a food for further researchers in this field.
And can you say anything about relationships between Azerbaijanis in the US and Armenians in the US? Is there any spillover of the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh to the community who is now living in the United States?
Well, it's very, very interesting question. I was myself in more than 25 countries of the world, and sometimes I see Azeri people in different countries, including the United States. And maybe it's interesting, I don't know how to say, but the conflict is not so much felt outside these two countries. So I didn't hear any problems that were here between these two nations, Azerbaijanis and Armenians. So I didn't hear anything about that. But I think that the relations is like with any other natures. As I mentioned here in California, you have almost the representatives of all nations of the world here. And despite of the facts of last days that we just can see on the news, I think that America is a really great place to have relations, which it doesn't matter of which ethnicity or which religion or which race you are, there are no problems with interrelation between persons. So I didn't see any problems here.
Thanks.
But I'm sorry, David, you have to take into consideration that I was able to meet people only in January and February. As you know, my stay here is for 6 months, and beginning from 14 or 13 of March till nowadays, it's quarantine, so not so many contacts with the people, so maybe if it will be more how to say, not freedom, but more action to move, so it will be easier to learn more, to see more. So this is my question. I didn't see any conflicts here between Azerbaijanis and Armenians.
Mm-hmm. I was also interested to see that you broke out asylum seekers in your demographic profile of the recent arrivals. And then in the historical perspective, you talked about the first stage was people who had been captured after World War II. And I'm wondering if you meant those were people who had been captured in the Soviet army during the war and had refused repatriation to the Soviet Union. Could you say a little bit more about those early potential refugees, as well as what are the grounds on which Azerbaijanis are being accepted for asylum in the US to the extent that they are?
Well, mostly this connected with the historical part of this problem, and I was only looking at the socio-demographic profile, but I was reading about that as well. As you know, during the beginning of last century and during World War II, Baku and its oil was like very important place for all the Soviet Union, as it was like provider of energy to the Soviet Union. So of course there were people that were taken after that time. They came to the United States after the World War II, but I'm not so sure that I can give you more information on this because I need to look more into the history of this problem. So I'm sorry, right now I'm working, and as you know, I'm working on the paper, and I will try to make some, let's say, deeper researches, mostly in this period of time, and put it into my working paper, and hopefully it will be posted, or you will make it available for the big audience. So in my paper, of course, in this presentation, it's not possible to cover all the problems, but in my paper, I will highlight this problem. So I will write this down for myself. Thank you for this question.
And on the contemporary period, do you have a sense of the grounds for asylum grants of Azerbaijanis in the US?
No, unfortunately, no. You know why? I was trying to talk with the people that were asylum seekers, and I have met one, and there was a difficult situation. People are not so, open to talk about these problems, because it's very personal and not, in general, when you have like online survey or something like that, people just ask the question, put it's like this, tackling that and just submit it. It's much easier when you just try to talk with people, asking them a lot of questions. A lot of questions are very personal, and people just try to skip these questions. So as you see from the diagram, so there are not so many people seeking for asylum here in the United States. I'm thinking right now, I was doing research in 2016 about immigration of Azerbaijanis to Germany. Right now, it's difficult for me to compare these two countries, but I think they should be more asylum seekers trying to obtain this in European countries other than America. But I may be wrong. I need to clarify this data.
We have a comment here again from Leila Aslanova. Based on my knowledge, the contemporary asylum seekers run away from the regime in fear for their life. So mostly youth that have been vocal politically and oppositional, as well as those who are being pressured due to their sexual orientation. Questions from anyone else? I don't want to dominate the Q&A here, but I'm always very interested in these topics. I guess one question I had, Rufat, was what was the most surprising thing that you found about the community here? You're already deeply familiar with the Azerbaijani diaspora and other countries such as Germany, where you've done a lot of work. What was most surprising about the US context?
Most surprising about the US context? Let me think. Well, I'm trying to organize my thoughts right now, I mean, maybe, my personal feeling is that the interpersonal relations here between Azeris are not so strong. That was surprising for me. I mean, in Europe, I saw more cooperation between people. You see, I mean, here it was more individual-like. I don't know. Maybe it's impact of the American culture. Maybe it's something different. But the people were like separate from each other. I would say like that.
Interesting.
So that was surprising to me. And especially, San Diego is a little bit close to the Mexico. So maybe if I would be in Los Angeles and conducting this research in other state, or I don't know, in other city, there will be different insights or different thoughts. But here, I mean, the people that I met, I think there is not so much cooperation between the nations. So that's my thought.
Well, you mentioned LA, and we have a question from someone who's done a lot of work, not on Azerbaijanis maybe, but a lot on other folks from the Caucasus in LA, from Ocean Kachikian. He's a sociology PhD candidate at UC Irvine. Thanking you for the talk and wondering if you might reflect on any differences you may have observed between Azerbaijanis who emigrate to Russia and other receiving contacts versus those who immigrate to the US. Do you think there is some systematic difference, like economic niche perhaps?
Well, differences is like, you know, of course, the people that immigrate to Russia, mostly all the Azerbaijani, as I said in my presentation, know Russian pretty well. So people that go to Russia, they like staying, I would say like staying in Azerbaijan again, because they can speak these Russian languages. They are more free. Here, as I know the people that I was talking to, I mean, after several years, the English language proficiency is very high, but at the beginning, it was not so good. So it's like there, people can find job really fast, but it's not so well paid as here in the United States. But comparing with this economic niche or something like that, I mean, in Russia and in former Soviet Union Republic, there is immigration from Azerbaijan to Russia. I think it's possible to find your job, especially more easily than you can find it here. Because with our diploma, since we all was in Soviet Union Republic, so it's possible to have job than it's here, because here you have to start learning, you have to take your to complete your education. After that, you can get a good job. So the economic niche, I think that it's more easily to find job, let's say in Russia or in other Soviet Union countries, but it will be not as much good paid as it's here. So that's my thoughts.
Joe Wiltberger, our visiting scholar at CCIS, is providing some information here about asylum applications and grants from Azerbaijan in the US in 2019. It's a very high grant rate. It looks like it's about 2/3 of those who ask for asylum are getting it in the US. That's much higher than it would be for most nationalities. And then there's another question here. Maybe we'll make this our last question from Leila again. I'm also curious to know if you had a chance to get involved with Azerbaijani diaspora organizations, if there are any in California, and maybe attend their events. Can you say anything about the community organization?
I have contacted with several, but unfortunately I didn't have any meetings with them because it was around early March. So I have several phone calls, but unfortunately I have had no meetings. So that's a honest answer. So it will be hard to talk right now about all the names and the contacts, but there are several here, not in San Diego, but in general in California, but unfortunately no meeting with them. Regarding asylum, I think again the numbers. I will look at that. I mean, I will look that into my paper. So thank you for this question. I mean, the question about the World War II and asylum, I will stress this in my working paper. Thank you.
Well, clearly there's a lot of interesting work to be done, and you've laid out an agenda also for future work. So thanks again for sharing your initial findings with us. If anyone has comments as you elaborate your work for your paper, please email Rufat directly. He shared his email earlier, and it's also available on the website of the center. Our final seminar in this academic year will be June 8th. Again, we'll be hearing from Dr. Tala Arrusan about the public health perspective on the global response to COVID-19. Thanks to Rufat and to everyone else for joining us, and we hope to see you on June 8th. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.